example of one of the prime examples of what we're trying to do on this farm. Every year we're going to have about 1/4 to 1/5 of the farm is taken out of vegetable production for a full year, and not tilled and have something growing on it the whole time. So this field was planted a couple months ago to oats, which will grow up big and lush and then die over the winter. All this big stuff here is oats. And then underneath there's a lot of weeds coming on, but there's also a variety of grasses and clovers. So all of next year there'll be a solid, it's a pasture, a mix of grasses and clovers. So we'll graze sheep out here and have chickens and pigs out here, which do some grazing. And we'll move them around a lot. So we're doing a couple things. One, the overarching goal is to improve the soil fertility. And there's many things happening that are going to improve the soil. One, there's no tillage for over a year. So all the soil microorganisms and stuff will have a chance to really thrive. We have a lot of clovers growing out here, so clovers take nitrogen out of the atmosphere, put it into their plant material, which then turns into the soil. We're going to have grazing animals out here, which is, there's this idea of pulse grazing. You have these plants, they grow up big, you come in there and you eat them off, and so when you eat them off, they're plants that'll then grow again, but when they're eaten off, all the root hairs die, just the very tips of all the root hairs, so there'll be a burst of microbial activity eating up all those dead root hairs. And just as the top of the plant is starting to grow again, and those roots are starting to grow again, that burst of microbial activity that ate those dying root hairs is dying, releasing those nutrients back to feed the plant. So you get just this flush of activity going on there. So that's just with the grazing animals. And then we're also going to be have pigs and chickens out here, which will be fed grain. So they'll be dropping all their poop out here. So we'll have that fertility input. But instead of, sort of a more typical situation where you'd be spreading manure on a bare open field, we're going to be dropping manure and urine on a field of actively growing plants. So all those nutrients will be immediately sucked up into plant material. So we have many things going on that's just put a lot of plant material out here and importing nutrients to here, so that a year from this coming spring we'll plow this up and plant vegetables, and it'll be in vegetables for probably 4 years, and it'll be back to this again. Exactly.
There's kind of a neat system in the native woodland where the system is designed to trap the nutrients. It's different from what Dave is explaining, but it kind of has the same goal. In New England, the deciduous trees drop their leaves in the fall, and they don't really have an opportunity to do that much decomposition because of the cold temperatures. So the leaves pretty much stay there during the winter, and then in the early spring in April, when it starts to warm up, the trout lily, or the dogtooth violet, comes up, and those, as they're growing their leaves and flowers, they take a lot of the nutrients as the leaves start to decompose. And if they didn't do that, the spring rains could wash a lot of the nutrients away into the brooks and into the groundwater, out of reach of plant roots. So the trout lily kind of is an interim nutrient grabber. It blooms and it goes into senescence. It dies, or it goes into dormancy really fast, so that it is dying and releasing its nutrients just as the trees are really actively putting out their leaves. So it kind of is a placeholder in grabbing the nutrients until the trees are actively putting out their leaves and can take the nutrients in their turn.
An example of nature not wasting anything. Anytime there's a nutrient, a little bit of nutrients that's there for something to grab onto, there's some species that's going to get in there and grab onto it in some way.
Right, exactly. It gets the timing this, right? There's actually a variety of spring ephemerals species that do that under a woodland canopy. They're taking advantage of this time where living in the understory of a forest is pretty dim most of the the time, but they can really thrive in this, part of the year where it's warming up a little bit. And some of the plants that we really love are in that group of plants, like the trout lily, but also things like bloodroot, spring, my favorite. But yeah,
Spring beauty, yeah. Trilliums.